I never believe in cursed objects. I collect souvenirs from every place I visit, a habit my friends say will catch up with me one day. Varanasi proved them right. I arrived on a humid April evening, camera in hand, chasing the stories hidden in India's oldest living city. My research grant was simple: document modern traces of ancient rituals. I spent my first 2 days along the Ghats, filming cremations and chatting with priests who scolded me for pointing my lens at death. On the third night, I wandered into a narrow lane lit only by oil lamps and the blue glow of a sari shop as TV. That's where I met the mirror seller. He was an old man with milky eyes, sitting cross-legged behind a blanket spread with dusty trinkets, lockets, carved beads, tiny brass statues. But one thing caught my attention: a palm-sized bronze mirror, its back engraved with a serpent, swallowing its own tail. The glass was clouded, almost black, yet I could make out my reflection distorted, wavy, as if underwater. "How much?" I asked. "Not price," he croaked. "Payment?" I laughed, thinking it was a bargaining trick. He tapped his throat. "Give voice." I assumed he wanted me to sing or speak some mantra as a joke. Instead, I handed him 500 rupees. He took the note without looking at it and pressed the mirror into my palm. His hand felt colder than the metal. "Keep covered in daylight," he said. "Show it only to the river after dark." I tucked the mirror into my backpack, amused by the drama. When I glanced back, the old man was gone, and the blanket of trinkets lay empty on the stone. That night at my guest house, power cuts rolled in every half hour. Candlelight flickered on cracked yellow walls. I remembered the seller's warning, but curiosity won. I pulled the mirror from its cloth and held it up. My reflection rippled like ink in water. Candle flames danced behind me, except there were no candles behind me, only in front. As I stared, the room fell silent. The usual buzz of ceiling fans and scooter horns outside vanished. My reflection's eyes turned jet black, and the lips not mine moved. "Let me breathe," it whispered. I dropped the mirror, and the sound of the city rushed back. The glass didn't break, but a thin crack ran across the serpent's tail. I told myself I was tired, jet-lagged, imagining things. I wrapped the mirror tight and shoved it into my suitcase. The next morning I forgot about it until a street chai vendor greeted me in fluent English, then asked, "How is the one in the glass?" I froze. He only smiled and poured tea. That evening, returning from the Ghats, I found my suitcase open. The mirror lay on the bed, uncovered. I was alone in the room, door locked, windows barred. Somehow it looked cleaner, the glass clearer. When I picked it up, it felt warm, almost pulsing. I hurried to the riverside, thinking maybe the old man's ritual would end whatever hallucination I'd started. The Ganges was quiet except for distant drums. I unwrapped the mirror and aimed it at the water. The surface reflected moonlight, then shifted. In the mirror I saw a stone chamber lit by oil lamps, a circle of masked figures chanting. At the center, a young girl in saffron robes stared straight at me, eyes black as ink. She opened her mouth, a hiss of wind burst from the mirror, knocking me backward. My head hit the steps, and the world spun. When my vision cleared, boatmen were yelling, asking if I'd fallen. The mirror had slid to the water's edge, half submerged. I grabbed it and felt a jolt, like static through my arm. The boatmen backed away, muttering "Pishach, demon." Back at the guest house I tried to sleep, but my body moved on its own. I woke standing in the courtyard, chanting Sanskrit phrases I had never studied. My throat was raw. I tasted iron. The owner pounded on my door the next morning. He said I'd been walking the halls all night, knocking on every room, asking in a child's voice, "Have you seen my mother?" He demanded I leave. I had the mirror hidden under my shirt like a tumor. I found a Hindi scholar at Banaras Hindu University. When I showed him the serpent engraving, his face drained. He explained the symbol belonged to a 17th century sect that believed mirrors could trap wandering souls. They called it Atma Pravesh, entry of the soul. They'd imprison spirits forced out in violent deaths, then bartered them for favors. Whoever owned the mirror risked sharing their body with whatever was inside. I asked how to release it. He said, "You don't release. You return. Return where? Where it was bound. I thought of the chamber I'd seen. Stone walls, oil lamps, chanting masts. The scholar suggested an abandoned temple beyond the southern cremation grounds. He warned me not to look into the glass again, not to speak if the voice spoke, and above all, finish before sunrise. I walked there just after midnight. The cremation fires behind me flickered like distant stars. The temple loomed ahead, half collapsed, swallowed by banyan roots. Inside, the air smelled of ash and dried marigold. I placed the mirror on a cracked stone altar. The glass shimmered, showing that same saffron-robed girl. She was closer now, her face filling the frame. Her mouth moved, but the voice came from behind me. Thank you? I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, the glass was empty, just my own face staring wide-eyed. Then the mirror splintered, webbing in the dust. A gust blew through the temple, snuffing every lamp. I ran until dawn painted the sky pink over the river. I slept for 12 hours straight, dreamless. I shipped my souvenirs home but kept the broken serpent backing as proof. The mirror's glass had turned to powder, fine as flour. I sprinkled it into the Ganges with a silent apology. I'd like to say that ended it, mostly. It did. My voice is my own again, and I no longer wake in strange places. But sometimes, when I pass a shop window at night, I catch a ripple in my reflection, a flash of black-eyed saffron, watching from the other side of the glass, asked Chak. They said the dress was beautiful, deep black silk, handmade lace, and buttons carved from onyx. Lucía Vega wore it only once, and that was enough to kill her. I remember the day it arrived. I was 15 then, staying with my Aunt Lucía in a tiny village outside Oaxaca called Santa Candelaria. The kind of place that doesn't exist on Google Maps. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just mountains and silence and stories that nobody outside the village ever believes. The dress came in a cardboard box. No note, no return address, just Lucia's name written in sharp black ink. She assumed it was from one of her cousins in Mexico City, someone with money and taste. She held it up against the window light and smiled. Looks expensive. No, she said, running her fingers across the lace. It did. It looked like something a movie star might wear to a funeral. But something about it made my stomach tighten. Not fear exactly, just wrongness. The kind you feel around things that aren't dead, but aren't alive either. That night, Lucía wore the dress to the village procession, part of the annual Santa Muerte celebration. The villagers walked through the streets with candles, singing prayers. Carrying a statue of the Holy Death dressed in white, Lucía walked beside them, proud and glowing in that black silk. People turned to look. Some nodded, others whispered. An old woman made the sign of the cross as we passed. Later that night, during the offering ritual, I noticed Lucía standing close to the altar. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and her hands trembled. She started mumbling words I didn't understand. They sounded like Latin. A low humming filled the air around her, like a swarm of bees trapped under her skin. One of the village elders approached her, but before he could speak, Lucía collapsed. They said it was heat stroke. The paramedics came from the next town over and found no injuries. Her heartbeat was strange. They said to slow, then to fast, like a skipping drum. They told us to keep her hydrated and let her rest. But rest didn't help. She started talking in her sleep, not snoring, not mumbling, full conversations, in a language I didn't recognize. Her voice sounded lower than usual, not manly, just not hers. It came from somewhere deeper. On the third night, I found her standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., staring into the mirror. She was still wearing the black dress. Tia, I said softly, "Are you okay?" She turned to me, slowly. Her eyes were all black, no whites, just shiny obsidian. "She's not ready yet," Lucía said, but her mouth didn't move. I screamed. She fainted. When she woke up, she had no memory of it. We burned the dress the next day, or tried to. My uncle set it on fire behind the house using kerosene. The flames caught quickly, turned red, than blue. But the fabric didn't curl or melt. It smoked, but the smoke smelled sweet, like perfume and rot. Then the fire went out on its own. The dress lay there untouched, surrounded by blackened grass. That's when my grandmother stepped in. She was old, quiet, and never got involved in anyone's business. But when she saw the dress, she turned pale. "This belonged to Dowa Catalina," she whispered. I didn't know the name, but my uncle did. He backed away like he'd touched a snake. Catalina was a healer and a fighter. During the Cristero War almost a century ago, she refused to convert or abandon her rituals when the church demanded it. They said she cursed half the village before they hung her from a ceiba tree and burned her home. No one found her body, but her clothes, her tools, her black dress were said to hold pieces of her spirit. It must have been passed down, or hidden, or lost, until someone found it and mailed it to us. By the end of the week, Lucía stopped speaking altogether. She only hummed the same tune over and over. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't blink. Her fingers moved constantly, like they were weaving something invisible. One morning, we found her sitting cross-legged in the courtyard. Around her were bones, chicken bones, arranged in perfect spirals, spelling something we couldn't read. Blood dripped from her nose, but she didn't seem to notice. The village priest came and tried to bless the house. As soon as he stepped through the front gate, all the windows shattered at once, not inward, but outward, like something was trying to escape. We didn't call doctors after that. We called a curandero, a traditional healer from the mountains. His name was Diego. He didn't flinch when he saw Lucía. He looked at her, then at the dress hanging on the wall, and said one word: attached. He explained that Catalina's spirit had been trapped in the dress through a ritual called Amari di Alma, a soul binding. It's supposed to hold a spirit in place, like a cage. But once someone wears the item, the cage becomes a tunnel. Lucía hadn't been possessed all at once. It had started slow, a whisper here, a dream there. But now, Diego said, Catalina was no longer just inside Lucía. She was becoming her. She wants to finish something, he said. She's using Lucia's body to do it. We begged him to reverse it, to free her. He said it could be done, but only on the night of Luna Muerta, the dead moon. That was 3 nights away. Until then, he gave us a red thread to tie around Lucía's wrist and a bowl of blessed salt to keep under her bed. He said not to let her near mirrors. Spirits, he told us, move faster in reflections. But Catalina, or whatever she'd become, wasn't waiting, and neither was the dress. The second night was the worst. Lucía screamed at midnight, not in pain, but in anger. Her voice sounded like 3 women yelling at once, layered and echoing through the walls. We ran to her room. She had broken the red thread around her wrists, and the bowl of salt lay shattered on the floor. She stood barefoot in the center, her eyes rolled back, her lips murmuring something over and over. She left it behind. She left it behind. She left it behind. On the wall behind her, carved into the paint with something sharp, was a shape I still can't forget. A circle with 7 small crosses and 1 eye in the center. Diego later told us it was Catalina's mark, a symbol used to lock part of her soul into the physical world. We tied Lucía down after that. Not just her wrists, her ankles too. My uncle cried while doing it. She was his sister. That same night, the black dress moved. We had locked it in a metal trunk and put a crucifix on top. But around 3 a.m., we heard a loud bang in the storage room. When we opened the door, the trunk was flipped over. The crucifix lay cracked on the floor. The trunk was still locked, but the black silk of the dress had somehow slipped out through the side like it was trying to crawl free. The next night, Luna Muerta came fast. The village was silent. No dogs barked. No music played. Even the wind seemed to stop. Diego prepared the ritual in the courtyard. He drew a circle of salt and ash, burned herbs I couldn't name, and placed candles in the 4 corners. Then he turned to us. She needs to wear the dress again, he said. It must be the same path in and out. We didn't want to, but we had no choice. Lucía didn't fight when we untied her. She stood still as we put the dress back on her like she was waiting. The moment the fabric touched her skin, she smiled. I remembered now. She said in a voice not her own. She stepped into the circle without being told. The ritual began. Diego chanted in Nahuatl, the language of the old healers. The candles flickered violently. Lucía twitched, her head snapping from side to side. Her hands curled into claws. Her feet lifted to inches off the ground. Then she screamed, not from pain, from resistance. Catalina didn't want to leave. She had come too far. The wind returned suddenly, howling through the trees. The flames blew sideways but never went out. Inside the circle, Lucía's face twisted, her features shifting like soft clay. For a moment, we saw the faces, one fading in, the other pushing through. Her voice came in layers, like voices overlapping in water. She betrayed me. The voice said, she took my power and ran. She left me to burn. Diego's voice grew louder. He held out a small silver mirror and turned it toward Lucía. The second she saw her reflection, her body spasmed. Her limbs stretched unnaturally. Black smoke leaked from her mouth. The wind howled louder. The dress flapped like wings. Catalina Vega, Diego shouted, "You are bound no more. This is not your body. This is not your time. Leave." Lucía dropped to her knees. Her mouth opened wide, wider than humanly possible, and a shadow poured out of her chest, not a ghost, but a shape, thin, tall, faceless, female. It rose above the circle, shrieked like metal grinding against stone, and then collapsed into ash. The candles all went out at once. Lucía fell unconscious. She slept for 2 days straight. When she finally woke up, she remembered nothing after the festival. Her body was weak, but her voice, her real voice, was back. The black in her eyes was gone. We burned the dress again, this time with Diego's help. He used salt, blessed oil, and prayers that weren't in any Bible I know. This time, it burned to nothing, not even smoke. Later, we found out something strange. The cardboard box the dress had arrived in, my uncle looked closer. Hidden beneath the shipping label was another name, Isabella Vega, Lucía's great-grandmother, the one who, family stories claimed, had once been part of Catalina's healing circle and had abandoned her before the execution. The betrayal Catalina had whispered about, it had been real. Catalina had never forgotten. The dress was meant for Isabella, but it had arrived too late. Isabella had died years ago, so Catalina found the next living Vega woman and tried again. Lucía never wore black again. She moved to the city, far from Santa Candelaria, and never spoke of the dress. I don't blame her, but sometimes, when I hear the old humming tune, the one she used to sing in her sleep, I still freeze, because I remember how it sounded coming from another voice, a voice that wasn't hers. And I wonder, even now, did we banish Catalina completely, or just move her again? When I moved into the apartment on Biergaard's Gate, I was just looking for peace. After a messy breakup and a burnout-level job collapse, I left everything behind and flew to Oslo with 2 suitcases and 0 plans. I found the apartment online. Cheap, central, old building. The photos showed bare walls, wooden floors, and a single window that looked out onto a quiet alley. It was perfect, or at least, I thought it was. The first time I stepped inside, it felt still. Not the calm, relaxing kind of still. The type you find in hospitals at night, where even the air feels like it's waiting for something. But I was tired, and the price was right, so I signed the lease. The landlord, an old woman named Rania, handed me the keys without much conversation. She did warn me of one thing. Don't touch the attic door, she said. It stays locked. Always. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. For the first week, everything was fine. Cold, yes, even in spring. The apartment felt a few degrees colder than the hallway, but I blamed the insulation. Old buildings are like that. Then, small things began to change. One morning, I found a note on my kitchen counter in handwriting that wasn't mine. Just a few words, written in Norwegian. Hans over Forset, she is still sleeping. I didn't know enough Norwegian yet to understand it, so I assumed it was some packaging scrap. I tossed it. 2 days later, I found another, this time on the bathroom mirror, written with condensation, like someone had breathed it into the glass. Ik wek henne. Don't wake her. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard footsteps above me, slow, dragging ones, moving from one side of the ceiling to the other. The attic, I told myself. It was old pipes or maybe a squirrel. But squirrels don't whisper, because that's what I started hearing next. Whispers. Faint, like someone talking through a wall, just out of reach. Sometimes it sounded like laughter, sometimes like crying. Then came the dreams. I kept seeing a woman standing in the corner of my bedroom. She was tall, wearing an old hospital gown, her hands red up to the wrists like she had dipped them in paint. Her face was always blurry, like it was underwater. She never moved, just stood there, watching. One night, I woke up and found myself standing in front of the attic door, barefoot, cold, my hand on the doorknob. It was still locked, but I had no memory of walking there. I asked Rania about the attic again. She went quiet. Then she said something I didn't understand and walked away. Later, I translated her words. The door was sealed for a reason. She lived up there too long. I started researching the building's history. It wasn't easy. Most records were in Norwegian, and some parts were missing. But I found something. In the 1930s, this apartment block wasn't residential. It was part of a state-run hospital, a psychiatric annex. After World War II, it was shut down, and the building was sold off and turned into housing. One patient stood out, Agnes Mistral, admitted in 1937. She was accused of witchcraft, not by villagers, but by doctors, because of the way she spoke in old dialects, wrote in dead languages, and claimed to hear voices from beyond the snow. She refused food for weeks, yet never weakened. She predicted deaths. Animals died when she passed. Nurses said her room would drop in temperature whenever she opened her eyes. She died in 1942 during an attempted exorcism. Yes, an exorcism performed secretly by a local priest inside this very building. It failed. According to the last report, she was found unresponsive after the ritual, but with a smile on her face, and written on the walls in her own blood was a message. I'm still here. I couldn't live there anymore. I told myself I would move out in the morning. That night, everything fell apart. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the attic door creaking open. It was no longer locked. The hallway was freezing. I could see my breath. Every light flickered from the top of the stairs. I heard footsteps coming down, slow, measured. I backed into my bedroom and slammed the door shut. Then, from behind the door, I heard a woman's voice, clear, soft, and terrifying. Do you know my name yet? I didn't answer her. I couldn't. The hallway outside my bedroom door was silent now but thick. That's the only way I can explain it. Like the air had turned to syrup. Every second dragged. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, trying to remember how to breathe. Then the doorknob began to turn, slowly, silently. I backed away until I hit the far wall. The knob stopped mid-turn, as if whoever was on the other side was waiting for me to scream. I didn't. The knob turned back, but I knew she wasn't gone. Morning came, eventually. Pale gray light filtered through the curtains, and the thick, suffocating atmosphere was gone. But the attic door? It was still open, just a crack. I didn't sleep the next night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on. I kept my phone in hand, ready to call anyone. The police, the landlord, even a priest. But what would I say? Hi, I think my attic ghost is trying to possess me. At around 2 a.m., the temperature dropped again. I checked the thermostat, still set to 20°C, but I could see my breath. That's when the voices returned. But this time, they weren't whispers. They were inside my head. You're just like the others. You look like her. You sound like her. I was never finished. I started to cry. Then I heard her footsteps above me again, pacing, steady. The floorboards creaked. Then I heard the sound of fingernails scratching wood, over and over. The attic, she was trying to come back down. I don't remember grabbing the ladder or the flashlight, but somehow I was standing under the attic hatch, staring up in the blackness. The air smelled like iron, like old blood and frost. My hand moved without thinking. I pulled the hatch open. Wooden stairs unfolded like a tongue from a mouth, and I climbed. The attic was empty at first, just dust, old boxes, and the smell of rot. But in the far corner, I saw something, a chair, facing the wall. I walked toward it, slowly, heart pounding in my ears. On the wall above the chair were carvings, hundreds of them, in a language I didn't know. Some were symbols, others looked like runes, and at the center, carved deeper than the rest, was a name, Agnes. I turned around and she was behind me, not in full form, just a shadow, tall and wrong. Her body moved like a flag underwater. Her face, if it even had one, was a blur of pale skin and black eyes that stretched sideways like they were melting. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then I felt something push into me, not physically, into my mind, like she was searching through it, peeling layers back. "You're empty," she said, just like me. And I realized something. She wasn't trying to haunt me. She was trying to replace me. I screamed, not in fear, in defiance. I ran back down the attic stairs, fell onto the floor, and crawled to the kitchen. My fingers found the lighter I used for candles. I grabbed the salt shaker, too, something I remember from the stories. I went back. She was at the attic stairs now, standing at the top, watching. I lit the lighter and held it to the old wooden frame. "Leave," I said. "You can't have me." And then I dropped the flame. The old dry wood caught immediately. Flames leapt up toward her shadow. She didn't scream. She just watched. And for the briefest moment, I thought she smiled. The fire department said it was a wiring issue, an unfortunate accident. I didn't correct them. I moved out that same week. I rented a cheap room across town and started over. No more attics. No more old buildings. Sometimes I still hear her in dreams. Always the same words. "You're just like her." I've never figured out who she meant. 2 months later, I got a letter from someone who used to live in that same apartment. She found me through a blog post I wrote anonymously. Her letter was short. "You saw her too, didn't you? The one with the black eyes." I burned the first journal, but she came back anyway. I think she always does. "Whatever you do, don't say her name out loud." I never responded. I don't want to know more. All I know is something was living in that apartment long before I got there, and now I'm not sure it ever left.